Welcome. I hope you're having a good day, and let's do another video. This one, oh, this is interesting. If you haven't heard of this guy, I first saw him on the Rogan show, and I think this is where they take the clip from in After School. If you've watched this channel I do here, you've seen me look at a lot of their videos because they have this incredible ability to illustrate through animation the ideas of these great thinkers. So let's jump into it. Hope you're having a good day. Grab coffee or a soft chair or whatever, and I hope you enjoy. Digital Academy, After School.
If you die before you die, you won't die when you die. That's the key. I call it the immortality key. It's the big job. It's what we're all looking for, right? The meaning of life? What does it mean to be alive? And what happens when we die? Is there a God? Is there a point to any of this? Well, according to the ancient philosophers and mystics, there are answers to these questions, like real answers. They're not hidden away in some book or some dark corner of the internet. They're not necessarily in your local church or temple. And even if Moses, Jesus, and the Buddha himself were sitting in your living room, they couldn't tell you. Because it's nothing you can actually learn. Nothing for your rational brain to compute, at least. You know, my hero, the late Joseph Campbell, once said, "It's not the meaning of life that we're after."
People say that what we're...
Joseph Campbell, yeah, it says right there. I was about to say he's well known for his study of myth and religion and symbols. It says there underneath, The Power of Myth, 1988, Joseph Campbell, great Joseph Campbell.
all seeking is a meaning for life. I don't think that's what we're really seeking. I think what we're seeking is an experience of being alive, so that the life experiences that we have on the purely physical plane will have resonances within that are those of our own innermost being and reality. And so that we actually feel the rapture of being alive.
But you can't very well experience that rapture until you've experienced its opposite. You don't know what you got till it's gone, says Joni Mitchell. So until you've experienced death, not in some abstract or metaphorical way, but an actual death that feels acutely and terrifyingly real in this lifetime, how can you know what it means to be alive? And how can you even talk about an afterlife until you've seen it for yourself? These are the mysteries. Now, in some form or another, these mysteries made their way through the high civilizations of antiquity. Ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, China. But it comes to us, to Western civilization, through the ancient Greeks, many of whom spent a lot of time in North Africa, by the way. 13 years in the case of Plato, the godfather of Western thought. So what did we inherit from these high civilizations? What are these mysteries? Like the mysteries of Eleusis that called to the best and brightest of Athens and Rome, including...
Yeah, so think about this, like Plato. Is there anyone more famous in literary philosophical history? It's like to think that he spent huge amounts of his time interested in these Greek mystery schools, or he had just made the case there that it had relevance across the whole kind of Eurasian continent and into Africa. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to back up a time because he's about to talk about Plato and Marcus Aurelius.
Civilizations. What are these mysteries? Like the mysteries of Eleusis that called to the best and brightest of Athens and Rome, including Plato and Marcus Aurelius, from about 1500 BC to the 4th century AD. They were sacred rituals for turning mortals into immortals. You went to Eleusis as a human being, and you walked away a god. How did that happen? Through the ceremonial experience of death and rebirth. Let's be very clear. Eleusis and the other mystery cults of the time were the real religion of the ancient Greeks, the people who built Western civilization, democracy, the arts and sciences, the theater that became our Hollywood, the Olympic Games that became our sports industry, the open marketplace of ideas that we take for granted every day on social media. Didn't you ever wonder how the people who invented all this and the very word for skepticism could somehow believe in a bunch of fairy tales? Did they really think Zeus was perched on some mountaintop, hurling thunderbolts down at us hapless humans? Or Poseidon was in the middle of the sea, patrolling the wind and waves with a freaking trident? Come on, man. Take Cicero, the great Roman statesman of the 1st century BC. He called Eleusis the most exceptional and divine thing Athens ever produced. Not democracy and free speech and all the rest of it.
So remember, Eleusis is a place. It's an actual place where they would go and have all these psychedelic ceremonies. I think that's where he's obviously going. I haven't seen this specific video, but I've seen him. I know I've seen him on Rogan, and I actually have read his book, The Immortality Key. Highly recommended. I have this banner to put on here. If you go to that website, it's just his fullname.com. You can find the book. But yeah, The Immortality Key is an awesome book where he really I actually listened to it on Audible, and he really just kind of gives all the proof of his argument, like all of his evidence, and his tying the dots together between what this really interesting field that he talks about called microchemistry, which you don't usually hear, or no, archaeochemistry, where it's like studying the mugs that they find from way back then and trying to find through genetic analysis of little molecules that might be left behind, like what was in their wine. I found that part of the book really interesting.
Eleusis was the thing we could never forget.
Eleusis.
It was said to hold the entire species together. Why?
Species together.
Because you went to its sacred temple to experience nothing less than death and rebirth. And only those who had made the long march from Athens to the torchlit sanctuary, drunk a magic potion, and witnessed the blessed
Magic
sight
potion.
and vision, as Plato called it, were said to conquer death by experiencing just a taste of immortality.
So think about that. So Plato would drink this magic potion and experience blessed sight and vision. I think it's Plato or one of them said it's like more real than real.
That rapture of being alive. And if you think about it, that's more science than religion. Once you've seen God, there's no unseeing God. You've proven the hypothesis for yourself. So what the hell was going on? Frankly, we don't know. It was all secret. To reveal what you saw in Eleusis was to risk execution, which is why Houston Smith, perhaps the most influential religious scholar.
Yes, you could only go there once in your life, and I think you could stay as long as you wanted, but you could only go once and you couldn't say anything, to risk execution. Like how intense that is. And I'm cutting him off a bit, but he's about to reference Houston Smith, another really famous writer on comparative religions. Like I remember once in university I took a course on comparative religions, like looking at Christianity and Islam and Judaism and Hinduism and Buddhism and looking at commonalities and stuff and comparing comparative religion, right? He's kind of like a real key person in that. We used his book as the textbook. So anyway, sorry, here he is.
Of the 20th century called it the best kept secret in history.
That's where the name comes
Like
from.
other rites of passage, it was thought some archaic techniques of ecstasy were to blame for that famous vision at Eleusis. The same techniques employed since time immemorial in tribal initiation rites or admission to a secret society to create that near-death experience, like fasting and sleep deprivation. I mean, that'll definitely get the job done, but there was another possibility. Remember that magic potion? In Greek, it was called the koukion, a kind of primitive beer, but it wasn't the only magic potion splashing around the Mediterranean. Dionysus, the Greek god of ecstasy and madness, he had a potion too. To drink his holy wine was to drink the blood of the god. In fact, you were drinking the god to become the god. This is where we get the whole idea of enthusiasm, from the Greek word enthusiazo. The essence of the god lives within you. You have become divine. So what kind of beer and wine was this? In 1978, at the height of the war on drugs, a controversial theory claimed these magic potions must have been some crazy psychedelic concoction. Beer and wine spiked with mind-altering drugs. Maybe that was the best-kept secret behind the vision at Eleusis that lasted for 2,000 years. Maybe that fueled the wild parties of Dionysus in the mountains and forests from Spain to Italy to Greece to the Holy Land, giving birth to our poetry and music, our comedy and tragedy. Either way, the psychedelic theory was the wrong idea at the wrong time.
So I think Ulysses was a place. I'm a little confused over if it was the place and then they recreated that ritual in other spots, because I know like the Oracle of Delphi, like that's like the main one. And then it sounded there though like he was saying that this was almost like a festival. 'Cause he said in Spain, and he like started listing some, and obviously Spain's not in Greece. Like it's so that almost implies like it's like a not a festival, but like a religious ceremony would be the term. Yeah, a religious, like a religious rite of passage.
with no hard scientific data to support it. Now, why does any of this matter? Because at the time, there was another healer who was into the mysteries, and he had a magic potion too, and it made you immortal too.
This is where it's about to blow your mind if you don't know where this video is going.
And he told weird stories that were recorded in ancient Greek, the same ancient Greek that was spoken by Plato and the initiates of the Greek mystery.
Yeah, you forget because like, and I know I'm pausing like crazy. I might be driving people nuts, but like, the Book of John was written in Greek. The letters were to Greek, like the Galileans. I'm pretty sure they were Greek speaking, right? Or at least some of the letters were written in Greek, right? So it's like really interesting to think that like the Greek philosophers and the authors of the Gospel and some of the New Testament were writing in the same language, would have known of each other. Like to think that like Jesus would have heard of Dionysus is just such an interesting thought.
And when this healer was asked why he told such weird stories or parables, he said, well, I'm talking about mysteria here. And he uses that word in Greek, mysteries.
The mystery of the
I'm not going to
faith
share the
is
damn secret with just anybody, he says. But I'll tell you what, I'm here to give sight to the blind, as long as you die for it. You must be born again before you can see God's kingdom, he says. And once you do that, I tell you for certain, in Greek he says, amen, amen, like for real, that you will see heaven open and God's angels going
Amen
up and down.
means for real?
In Greek, this healer was Jesus. We call him Jesus. And just like Dionysus, he was the Son of God, born of a virgin, who took on human flesh to leave us a gift. The gift of holy wine, his blood, that turns humans into gods. But unlike Dionysus, Jesus founded the biggest religion the world has ever known. Today it's 2.5 billion people, like a third of the planet. And if the earliest Christians knew how to brew up a psychedelic beer or mix up a psychedelic wine, and those magic potions were a direct path to die before you die, to have that vision of the kingdom of heaven, and the best kept secret of Christianity is the same as the best kept secret of the ancient Greece that preceded it, then it would rewrite the entire history of Western civilization. Now, the real question is, what does this all mean for us today? How do we die before we die in the 21st century? There's no one answer, of course, but in our leading medical schools, psychedelics are proving to be a safe and reliable means of producing that death and rebirth experience of the ancient mysteries. Now, I've never done them myself. Psychedelics are absolutely not for everybody. They are powerful and unpredictable and need to be approached with caution and reverence. But under the right conditions and with the right preparation, there are genuine mystical reports. Over the past 20 years, almost 75% of the volunteers at Johns Hopkins and NYU who've taken just one.
Emotion and brain functions are altered up to 1 month after a single dose of psilocybin. Yeah, it's like so many of these things. And this is, where's this? Scientific Reports, 2020 article. So if you think about that, that means that like the effects in single dose, that's like another hugely important aspect of that point. They have this one experience and it has effects on their emotions and actually how the brain works, and like functions means like how it performs basically are altered for a month.
Dose of psilocybin, the active compound in magic mushrooms, will rank it among the most meaningful.
Sorry, I just want to look into these actual titles. So this is now from the Journal of Psychopharmacology, psychopharmacology. So psychology and pharmacology combined into one tongue twister. Psilocybin occasion, it's a weird way to say it, mystical type experiences having substantial and sustained personal meaning and spiritual significance. Can allow for, or can create a situation where it, I don't know, can occasion, I don't know why that's tripping me up, but can occasion mystical type experiences having substantial, sustained personal meaning. That's what a lot of the research I've looked at has shown is like, for some people, it won't be very meaningful, but for some people, it will be. And for some subsect of that, it'll be one of the most meaningful experiences in their entire life. I think he tabled this argument really well when he was talking about how, he's not talking about it in a party situation. He's talking about it in a controlled, almost ritualistic, scientific setting. Setting is super important.
Experiences of their lives. So as these compounds become legal in the coming years, it begs a big question. Have the mysteries returned? Well, some of these clinical volunteers say their psilocybin journey is like a mini death all in itself, a foreshadowing of what awaits them at the end of life. And just like the initiates of the mysteries of Eleusis, or the mysteries of Dionysus, or the earliest Christians 2,000 years ago, by pre-experiencing their death, they found the immortality key. They've rediscovered that ancient principle. The only way to experience God is to let go the rational mind. And when the ego gives up, your consciousness begins to expand beyond the body, beyond space and time, beyond the very categories of being and non-being, to find itself looking back at itself. Well, there's your new definition of God, said Joseph Campbell.
But the ultimate, unqualified mystery is beyond human experience. It becomes inflected. As they say, there is a condescension on the part of the infinite to the mind of man, and that is what looks like God. This business of understanding the relationship of mortality to something in you that is transcendent of mortality is the big job.
Transcendent of mortality.
But if you don't die now, you might never experience that ultimate mystery of being as the mystery of your being. That to know yourself at the deepest level is really to know God. I mean, we don't have a word for it, but we call it God, this divine spark that lives in you. And you might never understand that heaven is not what happens when the physical body wastes away, and there is no afterlife. Because there is no after. There's only right here, right now. The kingdom of the Father is spread upon the earth, says the Gospel of Thomas, and people do not see it. For the ancient philosophers and mystics, it was never about living forever within the field of time, just going.
So that's interesting. So he quoted the Gospel of Thomas. So that's outside of the sort of, like you're not going to find, in the earlier video I was referencing something from Nimrod, like the Old Testament, and it's, you're not going to find the Gospel of Thomas in the traditional Bible, but you would find it in what's called the Nag Hammadi Library, the Dead Sea Scrolls, is where this comes from. The kingdom of the Father spread upon the earth, and the people do not see it. Wow. That's actually one of the most awesome quotes I've ever read. And people do not see it. That's powerful. Especially with that imagery, right? Like the guy there having this like astral experience, and then all the great kind of symbols of all the great religious kind of traditions there.
Going on and on until the stars fade and the cosmos goes dark. It was never about life after death. It was always about venturing into the timelessness of the infinite present to realize your own divinity and the divinity of everyone and everything around you, which is love in its purest form. Maybe that's what it means to be fully alive. And maybe that's what ancient sacraments were for, like holy beer and holy wine, to help us glimpse that perfect love and perfect peace. And maybe what we're seeing now is a modern-day sacrament descending on Western civilization. During her psilocybin session, one of the volunteers, Dinah Baser, a self-described atheist, had the overwhelming feeling of being bathed in God's love.
Yeah, look at that. Cancer patient says psilocybin, so mushrooms again, can be both therapy and a beautiful, I think it's like beautiful experience or something like that. I had the overwhelming feeling of being bathed in God's love. That's like what you always hear about psilocybin. It's so interesting, right? Like some people, and again, it's like the advice of this video isn't everyone go and do psilocybin. The advice in this video is it seems to be deeply connected with these transformative experiences that went in the right situation, in a safe, supervised situation where you're around people that care about you and where you're not vulnerable and you can, have a small dose or whatever they're doing. I'm not really sure. They haven't specifically said, but like people have these experiences that are ego defying, and that are sometimes reported as the most. I had the overwhelming feeling of being bathed in God's love. Could you get a more religious sentence than that?
And the sudden epiphany that every moment is an eternity of its
Well,
own.
that's pretty religious too.
Sounds awfully familiar.
Eternity isn't some later time. Eternity isn't a long time. Eternity has nothing to do with time. Eternity is that dimension of here and now, which thinking in time cuts out.
Wow.
This is it.
This is it.
This is my...
If you don't get it here, you won't get it anywhere. And the experience of eternity right here and now is the function of life.
If you die before you die, you won't die when you die. An pethanis, prin pethanis, denta pethanis, otan pethanis. Well,
and obviously, right, if you grew up in the Christian tradition, you've heard this a lot, that like the idea of Jesus being eternal life. It's interesting. It's a what is, because at a certain point we're not talking physical, we're talking at this like spiritual, psychological, identity, astral kind of level. If you die before you die, you don't die when you die.
if that's the best kept secret in history, maybe it's time for the secret to get out. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of After School. I'm Brian Moresco, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider checking out my book, The Immortality Key.
Okay, so I'll let him say this rest of the part, but just to pause in case anyone wants to write this down. The Immortality Key, the secret history of the religion with no name. This video was like a bit of an overview of key points, and if you found it interesting, but you're like, I'm not really sure, or it sounds far-fetched, I would highly, I got stuck between saying highly and hardcore, but I'd either highly or hardcore recommend that you check this out, because I mentioned earlier, but I listened to it as an audiobook and I found it absolutely captivating. The other thing I would suggest is, if you like Joe Rogan, watch his episode on Rogan, and he kind of goes through a lot of it. And I think I saw that first, and because he has an episode, I think, just with Rogan, but he also has an episode, or maybe it's just one, but he's on with Graham Hancock at the same time, who a lot of you will know. And so it's a great episode. And then I got really interested in it, and then I listened to this audiobook, and it was when we were moving houses, so it would have been in like October of this past year. And I listened to it like during the move, the full thing, and was just like totally obsessed, because I've been really interested. I grew up in a religious tradition, and I've also been like really interested in Greek history, philosophy, and I'd heard about all this, and he ties it together. Like sometimes that's where you have these big aha moments where it's like things you've heard, but it's just how it's tied together. And also the other huge part of the book is he really goes into this breakdown of his kind of scientific argument for why there's proof that there were this kind of psychedelic involvement in early rituals by like this archaeochemistry, where they're actually breaking down the what's in the cups. But okay, so that was a pretty serious one, and I hope people liked it, and you're still watching at 25 minutes. You might find it funny. Somebody took this mashup and made like kind of a funny video of him on Rogan and Rogan responding to all this and getting like kind of tripped out by it. And I just thought it would be a funny way to end it. This is obviously not. This is like a split up, cut up, fan made video, but it's pretty done pretty awesome. Check this out.
We tripping. We are tripping. Everything's gonna be fine, man. What the fuck am I doing?
Imam Mindra Gavashira Yavashira Channa Pisha Akatya Varshabihi Sutama.
What the fuck? This guy.
Enter the underworld to meet the goddess.
I've tuned into a frequency that's unavailable to me during regular states of consciousness. It doesn't seem like a hallucination. It seems like I entered into a doorway and I'm in a new place, and there's an urgency to it because I know that I'm not going to be able to stay here for very long because I'm not Muslim.
Please don't shut down. I'm an initiate. I've been through the underworld. I've drunk the potion. I've seen the goddess. Please do not eliminate this.
The joke's stupid.
And they're supposed to be terrifying. You were supposed to enter the underworld. And then it gets weirder. You were supposed to die, which speaks to part of the experience.
What the fuck?
You don't talk. So then it gets weirder.
End this. It's terrible.
Enter the underworld. Enter the underworld.
What the fuck? Excellent way to end this.
Thanks.
And thank you, everybody listening.
It's funny because that guy, when you watch him on Rogan, he's like the most. He's never even done psychedelics, and he's like a hardcore researcher that's like really articulate and like really well spoken and like just explains everything perfectly and has like and having listened to his book, I was like immediately looking to see if he had more stuff because just the way he constructs arguments is amazing. So if you haven't seen it, I realized while I was playing that the video is a lot funnier if you know the guy, because he's like, I don't know, just makes it a play on the whole idea of psychedelics. But it is the mystery of the faith, right? It's very interesting when you start thinking about that language and you start seeing it in like just the connection between Christianity and the early Greeks. All right, I haven't made a video for a while, so I'm being a bit rambly. I'm going to end this. Cheers. Hope you liked it. And yeah, the email's mains81@gmail if you have topic suggestions. Otherwise, have a great day. And I don't know. I hope you have a happy life day. Need a better ending. Cheers.